Hello, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Toy Talk Show. This one I'm really excited about. I've been excited for every single one, but this is a person I actually haven't chatted with and I've known for years, so I know this is going to be a very easy, free-flowing conversation. It's hard to describe my guest here because there's so many words you can use. Author, illustrator, designer, rack toy enthusiast, toy designer and skateboard designer, and this is bias, creator of one of my favorite magazine covers ever, Mr. Tim Barron. How you doing, Tim?
Good. Thanks for having me, Brian. I
No,
appreciate you having me on here. This is fun.
Is awesome. I forgot to bring it this morning, but over my studio, I have some sketches you sold on the MegoMuseum like 13 years ago.
Yeah, it was a while. Yeah.
Action Jackson, and you did Brick Mantooth, and you did Dracula, and I did come across them like just the other day. I see them every day, but you don't always look at what you're looking at, and I was like, geez, I've known this guy a long time.
Yeah,
I remember. Yeah, this was a long time ago. And my God, the body of work. I forgot to mention that you also were really into the art toy scene for a while as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You were one of the first guys I knew making like 3 3/4 inch. Like I think you did like some original characters. And you did like the V. The V Trooper and stuff like that, and they had this wonderful style to them. And are you still doing that, or are you too busy?
Been busy. I did make a few more Star Wars Holiday Special Lumpies.
Right.
Made a lot of those, and I think we literally broke the mold on that. So I don't know if any more of those are coming. Hopefully Hasbro Kenner will get wise and just make their own. I mean, it's out there. The holiday special, the documentary, I just watched that. That was incredible. Like, it's just a matter of time before we get Lumpy and Mala, I hope, and Itchy.
Yeah, you say that, but I mean, like, and maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just stuck in this niche. But the other day I was talking to a fellow posted on Facebook, I think a guy by the name of Scott Rogers, his like wish list of Star Wars characters, and the top two. Like, I'm not a Star Wars collector. I don't buy Star Wars figures, but his top two were Valance the Hunter from the Marvel comics. You know, the guy with the half cyborg.
Oh
face.
Yeah.
And the other one was Jackson, the big green rabbit.
Oh, and yes.
I can tell you right now, it's like, wow, those are the figures I would wait in line for. You know, like I would actually go to a show and wait in the stupid line because I need to get. And it's like, those are powerful. Like, when you're talking about me here, who doesn't care that much, those are powerful motivators. And they don't seem to like. I'm not up on the Hasbro world, but it's like, I don't understand why that has never really been approached. Like, I know they did a 6-inch Jackson and it didn't do well, but I think you gotta, if you're gonna make something for kids of that era, you've got to make it the way they expected to see it. You know what I mean?
And I think that goes back to, and Jason Lindsay has said this a lot of times, there's that sort of weird purgatory between Star Wars and Empire, where the mythology wasn't totally figured out. And so they were just making stuff up, and it was awesome and it like magical. And ergo, that's where the holiday special was birthed at, in that weird sort of limbo between those movies.
I remember picking up magazines at that time, and they were all like, they all had different names, like Light Blast or Ray Blast or something like that, but they should have just been called Pointless Star Wars Conjecture, right? Because it's like, Boba Fett is Luke's father. It's like, I read this fantastic 4-page article that is came true.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I love that era. I think, and we won't make it all about Star Wars, but I think Clone Wars disappointed me because it wasn't as good as the Clone Wars in my head.
Totally, 100%.
Yeah.
And I just found out about, like, just a couple years ago, I found out that there were, in one of those maybe it was a Star Wars document, that Plastic Galaxy, I think it was the documentary about Star Wars toys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they talked about there was a wave of figures that they had planned after Power of the Force, the last 17, that was a Clone Wars line. Like it was, and that just, oh my gosh. And they showed like, that's where the Mongo Beefhead character comes from.
Oh, okay.
It was a prototype, and the story was that Grand Moff Tarkin survived the Death Star somehow, and so he was going to be one of the main characters. Like that to me just sounded magical, and I think it's like when you were little and you heard the word Clone Wars, like your mind conjured all kinds of amazing, yeah.
I just pictured, I think as a kid, I just pictured like an army of guys with lightsabers that all had the same face, you know, and you know, just it's this real Wild Westy type thing, and like I mean, you know, if you actually took me to task and said, well, what was your Clone Wars? Well, I hadn't really. It was more of a vibe than an actual mythology I had built. It was just like how I thought it would look and feel, and but as Star Wars also, it went through a design change from Star Wars to Jedi, that when you put those two together without Empire in the middle, you start to go like, wow, things really gentrified in this neighborhood a bit, you know?
Yeah.
You know, we could go on, but what was I going to? Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about this guy though. This was one of my favorites of the year. And that was the Super 7 Astro Zombie you designed. Now, I'm a horror geek, and so I immediately take the name as being from a film, but you actually got it from a song, right?
Yeah, it was the song, is my all-time favorite song by the punk band The Misfits, called Astro Zombies. Like it's like probably my all-time favorite song ever. Like it's just like the perfect punk rock song ever. And I first heard it when I was like in 7th grade, and I was at a local record store buying cassette tapes. And I always remember seeing Metallica band members with Misfits shirts on, and then that logo, the Crimson Ghost, was just so like, so I was like, these guys have got to be awesome. So I bought a cassette tape of Misfits Walk Among Us, and that song was on there. And that is just so very much inspired by that song, which apparently was inspired by the movie.
Yeah, but it's just funny where influence comes from. I had a funny story, and maybe I shouldn't, but my friend is a IT guy, and he's a huge Misfits fan, and whenever he has to create passwords for people, it's just we are 138, and it's like, that's how amazing. Many people have a Misfits reference IP password out there, and I'm like, I don't know where this is from. You know?
That is incredible.
Yeah, and I always like the T-shirt thing. Always makes me think of like one of the meanest things Gene Simmons has ever said, but also like not entirely untrue about the Misfits. Is he said, "Yeah, the band, everyone buys the shirt, but not the album," and you know, I was like, "Oh, that's hurtful and fair." I bought the album. I loved Walk Among Us in high school, but that's awesome. That the inspiration, but the other inspiration, obviously for the design, and this is what I really love, is the Fisher-Price kiss in this. It's definitely, and is it Clawtron? No, this isn't Clawtron.
I believe I mingled a couple of the Fisher-Price. There's a nod to a couple of the different Fisher-Price adventure people in that cover art. It is Clawtron. Like the main design is an homage to Clawtron. But then I think the little like other Astro Zombie like walking through the background,
which is what nails it for me, because I remember that from there's the green robot dude.
The X-ray man and woman, they had those, and I was just, oh my gosh, like the most golden moments of my childhood. Like I'm looking at that package like in the toy aisle at Kmart, and like so those just very vivid, those certain action figure key like card art things.
How inspirational was toy artwork on your life, actually, your career?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, like 1,000%.
Okay. So what are some of your, like, if you had a museum, you would put those packages up on the wall.
Oh my gosh. Well, probably the earliest would be the Mego superheroes, the 8-inch Mego superheroes. Loved those as a kid, and I think just the flat, like spot colors on the packaging is just so.
It's simple and
yes,
100% effective. Yeah, that pink Batman.
Oh, the pink Batman.
When the Migos came back out, I like to think of myself as a bit like post cynical. You know what I mean? Like I've seen, and I remember I was photographing them for the site, and the Superman or the Batman box fell on the ground, and I freaked out, like it was a vintage.
Oh wow.
Mego. And I was like, wait a minute, this is new. I don't have to be. And it's like, wow, this. And then I started going, this really did hit me in the nostalgia button. Like I'm a kid at Christmas, and it's powerful.
Yep. They nailed those 50th Migos. So good job.
Sure, yeah, no,
Paul and Marty and everybody who worked on those. They're beautiful.
Yeah, no, they were a joy. My only thing with those is that I really hoped, and this is such a nerdy thing, but I really hoped I could walk into like Toys R Us and see them there and just be a kid for 30 seconds, and that I probably wouldn't even have bought one. But yeah, it didn't happen, and I'm jealous of anybody who got to walk into a Walmart and see even a couple of them. It'd be like, oh, that's neat. I did it in the States. I found an Aquaman in Buffalo. And
cool.
I bought that. I did buy that Aquaman.
So you got to experience that.
I got it a little
on
bit
a small scale.
Yeah, I wanted it on the Superman, Batman, Robin. It's like it's silly. I mean, I wasn't mad about it, but it's so neat. Like I think about 2 or 3 years ago, they did a big Mego launch at Toys R Us, and they had a whole wall of them, and it really was like just kind of fun to look at that. Just the same way that like. I like walking by the Super 7 display. A lot of the properties are stuff that I don't collect or I'm not into, but I like I love the work they put into the card artwork and the seeing an AHI creature at Toys R Us is like, wow, we have come a ways, like.
Oh yeah, and that's one thing I really appreciate about Super 7 is that they've got the nostalgia of the 5-point articulation figure, but they also pay like intimate attention to the card art and everything that goes into it, and like they just nail that.
Yeah, I was at PowerCon, and while I only very briefly rubbed elbows with Brian, and I was disappointed by that, but we just didn't mingle. I did get a friend of mine said that he came over to his booth, and it wasn't actually the right guy at the booth, but he said like Brian spent half an hour talking about Japanese superheroes with him.
Oh wow!
And he said, yeah, and he goes, my friends felt bad because the fella who actually created the figures that Brian wasn't really enjoying wasn't there. He's like, I got my friend's moment, which sucked.
Wow.
But he said that guy really knows his stuff. Like he is a fan. And it shows, because they did that creature recently that has that sort of cross section, and that's, if you're not a fan of like Japanese magazines, that's a thing they do. They love to see what's
interesting. I didn't realize that was oh wow, interesting.
If I can put it up, if I can find it, my friend Corey had an Ultraman like that, and it looks like Ultraman's got like chicken bones.
Oh wow!
In his legs and stuff. It is really kind of funny.
Weird.
Yeah, it's a neat obsession. And when he did that, I was like, okay, we're really this is a guy who knows what he's doing. That's it's nice to see, because you see a lot of the complaints about people or toy companies don't care, or toy companies aren't geeks, and that is true. A friend of mine once said, I think a lot of these guys in the toy industry could be just as happy selling socks.
Yeah.
maybe happier because socks don't have like ardent, angry fan bases. Maybe they do.
Agree.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's obvious that Super 7, like the stuff that they create, is created by fans for fans.
Yeah,
a lot of deep cuts, I guess you'd call that, references to creative minutia and nostalgic obsessions like that.
And it pushes buttons. I mean, I bought one of these little Rodans when they first came out, and I very well knew that they're going to put in a little box that looks like the Mattel box after, and you're going to buy that one too. And yep.
Yeah, the Shogun Godzilla that they did was really cool too.
Yeah, I got him right over here, actually.
I made the mistake of selling the original Mattel one I had a few years back.
Oh, really?
And I regret. I sold I had, I think, almost all the Shogun Warriors, the big 14-inch ones there for a hot minute, and ended up selling them. Wish I would have held on to a couple of them at least, but
I've gone up and down with those. I'm back to collecting them. Condition is not always the biggest concern of mine. Completeness is not. It's more or less just kind of having them and enjoying them.
Yes. I think that's mature collecting.
Yeah, I do have this like honey-do list of like my Goldorak needs his scythes, and I need some new stickers, and I'll get repros. Like I think Steve Moore turned me on to like you can just like completely make a new Shogun Warrior. But I can't imagine that like it's like I look forward to that rainy day project, but it may be 10 years down the line, but I'm very satisfied. I can't actually purchase anymore because I don't know if you could see it behind. I'll take a photo, but they're all starting to
see them.
Yeah, they're all starting to hit the floor again, and it's
yeah.
I'm an ADHD guy, so piles can form, and
same.
It's one of those things where it's like when something's on the floor, it's like that's not its forever home. That's that's a bad place. So
yeah, and it's a sign maybe to dwindle the collection or just read the collection down just a little bit, maybe.
The problem with it is I'm at that point where I'm like, there's a lot of stuff I'm 3/4 done. And you're sort of like, well, am I in the last two pieces are like $2,000 each, and it's like, yeah, I can't ever see myself forking out $2,000 for that figure, because I didn't jump on it when it was 200 10 years ago.
Yeah, right.
So it's all kind of like I don't know where it's not like I can cut something out and be like, well, I don't miss that.
Yeah.
But I do plan on doing some paring down, just because it becomes kind of like addictive to have all this cool stuff. And I mean, honestly, did I need last week? Did I buy this Hamburglar car? Apparently, I did.
That's a nice one. Was that vintage?
It's 80s. It's 80s.
Okay.
And the reason I bought it was, one, I love the Hamburglar, but the other thing was like that came out when I was in high school, and like a couple of my friends worked at McDonald's, and I can remember they stole a bag of these. And every like period break, you just see like 5, grimaces going down the halls, and it was just like, okay, it's actually kind of more connected to that than the Hamburglar. It's just like that was so stupid and fun, and it reminds me of that.
That's hilarious. Like pretty much almost any action figure that I pull out of my collection, I could probably tie it directly to some weird memory, just like that.
Yeah,
which is awesome.
I think that's why we pick these things up, and they're just little collectibles and mementos. I wanted to talk a little bit about skateboarding because one, it fascinates me.
Oh wait, hold on real quick before we go into skateboarding.
Yeah,
I just you had asked about the action figure card packaging, and then I went
down
a rabbit hole.
We were done with that. Yeah.
No, all good.
Yeah, let's
I just wanted to give that its due. Okay, so the Megos were probably the earliest, but then the Fisher Price Adventure people Loved the card art on those. G.I. Joe or
those
Real
later
American Hero.
figures, you mean, right?
Yeah, like the ones with the paintings of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved that those figures would kind of give you like an idea of like how you'd play with it when you played with them. Like, and there's some like the X-ray man and X-ray woman. I was enthralled with the idea that there was a close-up of X-ray man, and then there was like a small picture of an X-ray man walking through the background. I'm like, what, is there two X-ray men? Is there two X-ray women? And I couldn't figure that out as a kid. I was like, how is there two of them? Like, and
I guess you need to buy two of them.
And I think I did. I really think I did. Yeah.
What a subtle way to say army builder. Right? You know?
So true. Yeah.
And you know what? I don't want to take you off your game, but you just reminded me of the reason I love the Micronauts Aliens packaging so much.
Oh my gosh!
It's because
the Ken Kelly artwork.
Ken Kelly, like just in the back of Membros' card artwork, you see Force Commander, and you know, like there's
stomping
other
through the background.
Yeah, and he looks massive, and I still have the original card back from when I was a kid.
Oh, that's awesome.
And because that was like a real imagination captor for me. Like I could probably blindfolded draw that card. You know?
Those are gorgeous. Yeah. I have printouts of those from the internet that I printed out and I put in a special book of like inspiration. I've got those Micronauts images in there. But yeah, anything done by Ken Kelly. I'll tell you one of the other ones. It was one of the hugest influences for me that just absolutely throttled me as a kindergartner. I remember I was a kindergartner and I remember walking into, it was a department store here called Belmont. And I remember walking into, they had moved the toy area into the back of the store temporarily. And I walked in there and Manglors were on the shelf. And I remember just being blown away by the Ken Kelly art. Like so much so that last year I tracked down a box and I bought that box for Manglord. But of course, anybody who, you know, the name Manglor means anything to them knows the great disappointment of getting beyond the box and actually opening the toy. And I think you have a whole section on your website about these gems.
I don't have, I have the catalog, and I guess this really got ugly too, because it was basically like false advertising, if I'm not mistaken. I remember Manglors a little differently than you, because I wasn't so much blown away by Ken Kelly's artwork. I was blown away by the problem Ideal had with it at retail, which was like every window was busted. And a kid had
interesting,
because a kid wanted to test it, like, you know what I mean, like in nowadays they would sonically weld a plastic card around so the kid could not break into it. But then all the Manglors at my local Toys R Us, because we didn't get a Toys R Us until I was like in the 10th grade. And I think Manglors were like a year or two old by that point. I'm not even sure. And so they were absolutely just knackered when the Toys R Us opened. They were just destroyed.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I always think of that when I think of Manglors, is like how I think Neil Kublin said the exact same thing about like the superheroes putting them in the solid boxes. The reason they switched to window boxes is that kids were damaging the solid box.
Oh yeah.
So it was the same thing with Manglors, except it was like every kid couldn't resist. I gotta know if this works. You know, you can rip his arm off and put it back on, and then, you know, once you've done that, the figure's goofed forever. It's
for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I was gonna say John Kent from Toyfinity actually. He has a license for Manglors, and he released some of Manglord, and they are outstanding.
Is that Goliaths?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And the figure, the way they designed a Manglord is it's obviously it's Manglord, but it's got a modern spin on it, but it's still got the nostalgia factor it's perfect. Like it's awesome.
Can you swap limbs with other characters?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's okay. So that's
it's awesome. Yeah,
and it works.
And it works. Yes, yes. 43 years later, we got what we always wanted.
that kind of makes me laugh of like the Super Joe Unlimited line that White Elephant Toys did, now called Astro Command. It's like, yeah, you made a figure that won't fall apart ever. Congratulations. Like this is a better made action figure than the original, and it's it's progress. Right?
That is awesome.
Yeah. I haven't seen such a well-engineered toy in a long time, and that kind of makes me laugh. It's kind of the same thing you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Manglor artwork was fantastic. And one of my biggest regrets in life, I met Ken. I interviewed Ken for the MegoMuseum like in the 90s. And then I went to a Chiller Theater. And yeah, he had a room at the Chiller Theater, like with all his art. And I sat down with him for a little while, chatted with him because he remembered me from the interview. And then at one point he said, if you're ever interested, I have the original Manglors artwork. And, this was probably like 2003. And I probably could have gotten it for, what would consider like a small fortune then, but nothing now.
Yeah.
And I didn't follow him up because it's like, well, I'm more into 70s stuff, and I just kind of walked away, and it's like, wow, I had an opportunity there to own something like amazing, and just went, eh.
That is
hindsight,
hilarious. Yeah, hindsight. Oh, but then like your G.I. Joe, Transformers, all that card art that I took in as a kid, He-Man.
Masters had a hell of an incredible packaging.
I mean, again, I still remember the first time I walked into a department store and saw He-Man sitting on the shelf looking at me like,
oh yeah,
as a kindergartner, and it blew my mind.
Those I was probably a middle schooler when that came out, and I can only imagine what a kindergartner would have thought of that.
Yeah,
it's probably that's like for me, I was in kindergarten when G.I. Joe Adventure Team came out, and those giant boxes with the beautiful artwork, him fighting sharks and manta rays, and it was just like, how can you not be seduced by that? In a good way,
Yeah.
And I just, I understand people that collect the toys and they don't need the packaging, and there's certainly a lot to say about loose toys and the aesthetic and the design and the love that goes in them. But for me, packaging is half of it a lot of the time.
Oh yeah. And in cases like Manglors, it's more than 3/4 of it. Of what they were back in the 80s.
Yeah, you know what? If I was going to reissue the Manglors, I would just print boxes.
Yeah.
And you could just do like a cardboard cutout of the figure, put it in there.
That would have been preferable to the 80s incarnations of them, I'm thinking.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I guess you could have like tore their arms off and then taped them back on. That would have been
or that. Could have worked better. Oh, the Clash of the Titans figures from Mattel. The card art on those. I think that was Ken Kelly also.
Was it? Oh wow!
I think that is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. I've in recent years I've gone on eBay and hunted down a lot of those card backs, and I've got a whole box of like that I guess consider my reference inspiration box of just all card backs, and I ended up finding those Clash of the Titans ones, so those are in there.
Yeah,
beautiful art.
Oh yeah, and that stunning, like each character gets a gorgeous painted card.
Yeah, and the Charon, I think that's his name, Charon figure, the skeleton guy in the robe. That was and still is like one of my top 3 probably all-time favorite action figures. Like before there was a Star Wars Emperor figure, he was my Emperor, my stand-in Emperor, and
he's kind of the cooler of the two for the Emperor.
Yeah,
and it's funny, like you think about it, that movie comes out, it's filled with all these characters, and they make a figure of a character with no lines who's in the film for 1 minute, you know, and we all wanted it. We all like they were smart enough to realize like that's that would be the one kids would gravitate towards. And I have my parents bought me those, I think, for like Easter or something. I can't remember, but they wouldn't let me have Charon or Calabos. My mother said the other two characters look like hell. I remember her saying that. And I was like, yeah, but that's why those are like, you know, so I had Thalo and Perseus, which was okay. You know?
They needed bad guys to fight, though.
Yeah, it was. I would have preferred like if she'd got me Perseus and Calabos, because that's more of a Luke and Vader situation. But
yeah,
I didn't pay for them. But yeah, that card artwork is etched into my brain. That's beautiful. And Mattel's Battlestar cards are really nice as well.
Oh, those are beautiful. Yeah. I actually found one for Imperious Leader a while back and grabbed that. And I love that they had painted versions of the figures on the back of the cards as opposed to photographs of the prototypes or whatever.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, well, that's a trigger too, isn't it? Like that original drawing of the original 12 Star Wars.
Holds a lot of, I love that.
Holds a lot of feelings for me, the feels, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I personally, I love that too. I love drawings of action figures, especially on bootleg toys. They go to like the Tomlands. They go to that length to do a little line drawing of those heads, and those like these are iconic. Like I want this on a shirt right now, you know.
By the way, I just have to say a special thanks to you for your contribution to pop culture, Brian. Like from Plaid Stallions. Like I first discovered that probably about 10, 11 years ago. Like the amount of times that I've gone to that website for inspiration and then gone to your knockoffs and your Rack Toys books for inspiration, all the time. Like it's one of the first things I grab to page through for inspiration. So thank you for your
thanks, man.
contribution to pop culture.
That means a lot. I don't often know what I'm doing sometimes, but I do kind of just know what I like and what I'm passionate about, and it's just mainly having fun. And I love doing stuff like Toy Ventures where you're trying to figure out the entirety of the line, but nothing's more fun than just doing a book and it really doesn't have a big long narrative to it. Like you're just splashing toys on a page, and I kind of miss that. I almost feel like I need to take on another project just to get that back into my that I don't know. I guess it's almost meditative, right? You would know a little bit about that, where you're just kind of like, there's no agenda here, you know. Let's just see what looks good on the page. And I don't think I'll ever grow bored of that. It's never going to feel like work, you know.
Yeah, are you still planning on doing the mall superhero appearance book?
Yeah. What's thrown that off for me is not like, for years it was like I don't have enough entries, and now I have more and more entries that are looking good, and now I'm just trying to figure out the design aesthetic of it. My friend Corey and I are supposed to bounce some ideas off each other, and I think the ball is very clearly over here somewhere. And you know, the way I work and the way a lot of people work, I think, is I'll be working on something else and need to get it done, and that's when I'll have an epiphany about the layout and look of this book, and I'll just switch. That's
kind of how creativity works, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, about a couple of years ago when I was working on Toy Ventures, I was going nuts on an article. It was the Michael Jackson Thriller toys.
I love those.
And I couldn't figure out how to make the page look 80s because it's, you know, and even though I lived in that era, it was driving me crazy. And I took the dog for a walk, and I think I got about like 37 steps and went, and I had to run back in.
And you got to seize those moments too before they escape you. Yeah.
I just thought it was funny because the dog looked at me like, come on, no.
So that was a great article, by the way.
That was Tyler Hamm who wrote it. And that's the kind of stuff I love. Like that's the kind of stuff I want to focus on with Toy Ventures is this weird obscurities that you'd see them in Tomarts. They'd have like one figure, and you'd go like, "What's that all about?" You know, like I've seen Mego Star Trek, but who's what was it, Sarge with the smell of battle or something like that? There's some like toy that you like had scratch and sniff on it. And it's just like that needs to be fully explored and explained to me, and that's kind of where Toy Ventures comes from, is that kind of angle where it's like I'm curious about that, so let's have fun with it.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know about little loggers until about a month and a half ago, and now I didn't know I had to have them all.
Yeah.
So
I understand that, Chris. When he first kind of made a pass at doing an article on that, I couldn't get my head around it because I'd never heard of them.
Yeah.
And then I think by the second time he posted about them and that he had the full set and how rare they were, I was like, "Oh, this is really interesting." Now I'm fascinated. And then he went the extra mile and got some Kenner contacts to talk to.
Oh, wow.
And that was where not only did that go very, very well, and we got some wonderful insight into the whole little loggers and again Kathy who created them. But this guy just like knew a whole bunch about Stretch Armstrong. And
oh, wow.
I was like, I'm working on issue 12 right now, and we're going to be talking to the creator of Stretch Monster, which
oh, wow.
Super
awesome.
Excited about, because I think Stretch Monster is one of the most influential toys of my childhood, and I never had one.
Yeah. Yeah, it has that iconic look. I never had them either, but it's like I remember these toys. I don't know, it was weird when I was little. For some reason, I'd see certain toys. I think about the suction cup guys too. I can't remember what those were called.
Suckerman,
yeah. Like for some reason, I thought that there was like some toys I just like wasn't meant to have or wasn't allowed to have for some reason, for one reason or another. And the Suckerman and Stretch Armstrong and Stretch Monster were one of that.
Toys hung around longer though too.
Yeah.
Like people have always said to me, I thought Planet of the Apes lasted till like 78, and it's like, because it did at your toy store. They did. The idea of clearancing stuff really, I think that started more in the 80s and 90s on a real like high rotation. Because like there used to be a chain here called Zellers, and they went out of business I think in the 2010s or not about 15 years ago. And like up until they closed, I could find Xena action figures on the shelf.
Oh, no kidding.
Not Xena, Gabrielle, but they still had like old product. And like, that Xena line was like almost 10 years old, still sitting there. And I think we kind of grew up with that, and it kind of gave us a longer toy history. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, I remember when Children's World Children's Palace went out of business here in the States. It was in summer of '92. And I know
I was in
you and Mark Huckabone did a whole couple episodes on that, which was enlightening. But yeah, I still remember seeing an Indiana Jones tote action figure, and it was 1992. It was 10 years beyond when that and it was just. Yeah, there's a couple totes hanging around.
I picked up case fresh, unpunched Clash of the Titans.
Oh my gosh!
Like,
are you kidding?
No.
Oh my word!
I ran into Bob Monco, who was a legendary toy collector, and actually the guy who drove with Mark Huckabone across. Like, I guess they just got in a car and went, and the car had no hood. So I ran into Bob in New Jersey, and it was at a Chiller Theater, and it was absolutely one of the most crushing things that's ever happened to me. As I was at that show, and there was a boxed Aquaman versus the Great White Shark for $200.
Oh my god!
I was a college guy, and I went like, and I put it down, and I turned around, and I swear to God, I walked 1 foot and thought, I should buy that. I don't care if I spend all my money, I should buy that. And I turned around, and Lenny Lee from Lee's Action Figure News is holding it, and
oh my gosh,
he looks at me and goes, "How could you pass this up for like $200? Look what I just got!" And I was like, you know? But Bob was there with him, and Bob said, come to my car, and he had carded Membroses.
Oh my gosh,
Perseus's, totes. I bought a stack of totes. But I was in this kind of like, if I'm a collector, but I'm a wheeler dealer flipper. And if I buy a big, so I spent all my money with Bob. I think I spent like $250, and I got this box. And it had like Return of the Jedi, and it was all stuff I know he paid like $1 for.
Oh my gosh!
And I'm pretty sure I was just giving him gas money, to keep going.
Wow. But I remember from podcast, you were hustling Dick Tracy blank action figures too, weren't you?
My friend was.
Okay.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be friends with a couple of people who I would consider like mentors, like they were older than me.
But, I remember you saying that, yeah.
Yeah, and there was a couple of guys, and the guy who discovered the Canadian Star Trek warehouse was a fellow by the name of Joe Levy, and Joe was just, oh boy, he so ahead of the curve, and if he'd just been able to convince his spouse to take a few gambles, I think he really would have been successful. But the problem with him was incredibly sweet, incredibly generous. And so he often would just basically sell stuff for a small profit, or give stuff up because he couldn't afford to buy it. Like he would tell me, "Hey kid, that variety store's got 5 Planet of the Apes tree houses in it, but they don't want to." He would want them for $10 and they'd want 15, and he'd go, "You grab them." I just a guy who was ahead of the curve. So he discovered that. Unfortunately, I can't. It gets mired in the details of who did what. But another fellow by the name of Brad, who started a company called Third Planet, he ended up buying the inventory, and then he was kind of another guy who went around to warehouses. Like I think his thing was he used to call movie poster distributors and say, "You any old movie posters?" And he said the greatest sentence I ever heard in my life was, "No one ever has asked me that before." And he found like a vault of 50s posters, which was,
oh my gosh,
kept him going. So he was another pioneer, but he was very visionary. And when the blank came out, it came out in the Sears catalog, and the Sears catalog came out like in August, and it had the blank, and he realized it was the only place you could get it. He called Sears, put it on his American Express, and said, "I'll take every one." And the president of Sears called him and said, are you for real?" And he said, "Yes." And I remember going to his house, and he had this huge basement that was just a warehouse, and he had a pallet of blanks. And he put an ad in Toy Shop, and then he wanted like $50 for a blank. Like he was he was more cutthroat than Joe. Like he was not afraid to ask for the prices. And I liked both of them very much. But he did that blank thing. And whenever I tell that story to people, they go, "Come on." I was like, "No, I was there. I saw it."
He was literally one guy who owned all the blanks.
He said something like 20 got out before he got them all. I remember him being very proud of that fact. So like he really I think he went, sadly they're both gone now, but and I lost touch with him over the years, but I think he did very well with that blank thing. But I think it also just completely died by like 1992.
I could see that.
People moved, like action figure collecting was in such a different place then, where new stuff, like the late 80s action figure collecting, people were buying weird stuff just because it was an action figure,
Yeah.
I can remember in the 90s, this guy would come and he'd have a backpack and he'd pull out this form and he'd go, "Do you have the Boba Fett with the half circle? Do you have the Xena with this sword?" And I just remember like this stuff's all like I was still in the head of vintage, but that new action figure collecting thing was just coming to fruition, and now, I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's so funny. These conversations absolutely crack me up, because it's almost just like when you talk about these like backdoor action figure deals where it's almost like you're like smuggling contraband or something like that. It's really funny. Like,
well,
we all have
toy show stories are hilarious too.
They really are.
Mark Huckabone, who has been to like 200,000 toy shows, has seen fist fights.
Oh my gosh.
One of the funniest ones, and this was a friend of ours, I won't mention him, but it was like the worst. Mark described it as like the worst, most boring toy show, and they were like really far away from home. And his friend started day drinking at the show because he was bored.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Well, this is the part that makes me laugh, is he fell down, which is not what makes me laugh, and they called an ambulance for him. But the hospital was across the street. So Mark said it was the funniest thing to watch the ambulance get him, then drive across the street and drop him off. And then like they charged him. And it just like stuff like that, where it's like, you know, with time and hindsight, it's funny. But I love stories like that, and that's the whole toy collector culture. I've heard outlandish things.
Did I ever tell you I had a guy fake his death to get out of his side of an action figure deal with me? Wow. He faked his impending death.
How much are we talking about?
I should have been wiser than this, but it was a guy I had done lots of deals. I had met him on eBay, and he had bought a bunch of stuff from me. And then so we made friends like on Facebook or something like that. And then so we did several deals, and then he was telling me that he had an illness and that he was getting ready to, and that we had done this deal. I had sent him my figure. It wasn't, I mean, it was like, and I should have known. I won't even tell you what he said that he was going to give me, because I should have known better. Yeah, but anyways, he started just fading his way out, and he was like, "Tim, I don't feel great. I know I'm not doing well, but the figure is, my wife is going to email the figure to you, and I wish you well," and things like that. And he's still alive and well. And
anyway, is he got a mustache now?
So I should have known better. Blame it on my own naivete. But
wow, I've never had that.
I mean, you gotta admire a level of commitment to the game if you fake your own death to get out of an action figure deal in your 40s. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's it's also just like, what are you attempting fate? Like, what are you doing here? Like, that just seems like
that's true.
Bad idea.
I hadn't thought of that angle, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you are a guy in your 40s. Do you want to be doing this? Oh wow, yeah. I think the one that doesn't come as close to that, because that's probably the kookiest I've ever heard. But years ago, I think it was somebody, maybe Mark's mother or something, told me that occasionally a collector would call with a different personality and
really
want to order something for the person, right? And would do it like, you know, "Hi, I'd like to order this for Jim," you know. And it was just like, okay, like they never let on or made, you know, shamed the person, but like it was like, boy, I'd really like to know more about that, you know, like. But yeah, wow. And someone else, I think, told me this was a long time ago. Somebody worked for a company that sold pricey GI Joes, and this is back before you could just add stuff to a cart. You had to phone in. Mm-hmm. And they said,
I remember the episode where you and Jason talked about the ads in the back of Toy Magazine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This was from that time, and a guy I met, or a friend of a friend, I can't remember, this is a passed down anecdote, said he could tell a lot of the dudes calling in to order stuff were in a closet, or they were in the garage and they were whispering, and it's like, oh, you know, and your heart goes out to those. I know this guy. I am this guy.
Oh, that's so funny. I love stories like that.
Oh yeah. They unite us. I can't tell you how many times like I bought something stupid with store credit. And then, my wife would go, "What did that cost you?" And I go, "It was free." And that'll discourage her more, So, but yeah, it's that's the fun of collecting, I guess, is the sense of community and the wacky stories you get to share, and the lengths you go to find some of this stuff sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's something that we kind of miss in the era, in the eBay, the post eBay internet era of collecting. Like, it's great because easy access to things that in the early 90s we didn't even know existed. But I don't know, there's something about the thrill of finding information out little bit by little bit through solving mysteries prior to the age of the internet. There's something kind of amazing about that.
Yeah, I used to drive to the Syracuse Toy Show every year in Syracuse, New York, and it's about a 5-hour drive from me. We'd stay in a nice hotel, and the joy of it, this is really like in the early days of the internet, was you didn't know who was going to be there, you didn't know what was going to be there. Mm-hmm. And I can honestly remember being at one, and a guy had a Lincoln Wolfman. And
oh wow,
I circled it the whole day, and then eventually dropped the $150 he wanted, and I remember him saying, "You're the only person in this entire place that knows what this is."
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, that was the joy of going to these like local and regional toy shows. And it's probably still why I go to toy shows to this day, is that I don't know what I'm going to find.
Yeah.
And I don't need there to be like, yes, a lot of shows I go to have 13 dealers of Funko Pops and homemade jewelry. Yes. You just need that one or two guys who collect vintage, and they might have something absolutely bizarre, and I still love that. I love a scrounge. I think the internet was like, everything is a good and bad thing. And the rise of eBay did hurt flea markets and toy shows, but it also, like a friend of mine once said, it also kind of kicked, you'd go to a show and there'd be this dealer and he'd have these ridiculous prices on these rare toys. And you knew that he was overpriced, but when are you going to see it again? And now, that if you have like something to kind of play off of when you do see those guys and go, okay, well, that he wants $250 for that goes for $100 all day. So that was the good part of it, but the second part of it was it kind of took the fun out of it a little bit. It's weird. I wouldn't trade, I wouldn't go back, but I would love to go back in time to a 1990s toy show. Knowing what I know now, and like, oh, $5 He-Mans, eh?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. What's funny is like, I was thinking about this the other day. I started collecting when I was 15, which was kind of early. And I go to shows now, and a lot of the people are like 10, 15 years younger than me that are dealing. And the stuff in their glass case wasn't even at toy shows when I started. It was at Toys R Us.
Wow.
Like, it was still there. And when I started toy shows, the stuff I collected, 70s Megos and stuff like that was the junk under the table. The stuff on top of the table was Stifes and Wind Up and die-cast cars, and because the people were like 20 years older than me.
Wow, interesting.
It was it's really interesting how it's changed. We still have a show where the old-timey car collectors and toy collectors set up every year. And they're like a club, so they're all like in their 70s, and they all look great. And you can tell they're just setting up at this show for the sense of community, and
sure,
you can't get away from their tables without talking to them about something. Like it's such a friendly, relaxed vibe.
Yeah.
That I really, the last time I went, I was like, I'm never missing this again. I want to go to everyone until they stop doing them, because these are the people that I came in with. And and like I said, like I can walk that entire show and not find a single thing to buy, but I don't care, because it's like this stuff, you'll see stuff there you won't see anywhere else.
Yeah.
Just unusual things, and I miss that about collecting a little bit. I think we get these action figure expos that are amazing and cater to our every whim, but sometimes it's fun to just walk into a toy show and see a table full of Chenko licensed trash cans. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Like, when am I going to see the Grizzly Adams trash can again? I don't need it, So, one thing I wanted to talk to you about, because one, it mystifies me that you, as a man in your 40s, skateboard still.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that, because I would injure myself profusely. But also, you got into skateboard design in a very big way.
Yeah. That started about 8 years ago. And I think that part of our stories are kind of similar, in that we both worked a day job that maybe we weren't 100% excited about all the time, but we did it because of duty and responsibilities and pay the bills and things like that. But
absolutely, yeah, and you've got mouths to feed, as I do.
Yep. And so I was in my late 30s. I was 37, and I had just made contact with one of the couple of the guys that I used to skateboard with, grew up skating with in the early 90s, and he was running an indoor skate park. And just running into him and him asking me to do a flyer for them, started this chain reaction. And I'd always talk about skateboarding, like at the break table at work, and they were just like, would you just shut up? Maybe you should just get a skateboard, Tim, and just start skating again to get this out of your system. Because I would think about it every day. And it was like, once I started skating again, like all these other areas of my life that were stagnant just started moving forward. It was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And these guys that I had, made contact with that were running the skate park, like they were friends with people over in Santa Cruz, California, who worked for a company called NHS, which runs Santa Cruz skateboards and Creature skateboards. And so they contacted, kind of made the bridge with me and them. And then so I did a couple boards for Creature, and then I did a couple for a local skateboard shop. And then it just started growing every year. I did probably the one that really got me going was, there's a company called Super 8 Skateboards, and they were all monster themed skateboards.
Super 8 and Super 7. That's really funny to have on a resume.
Yeah. So he had me pretty much like design an entire series of boards. I think I don't even know how many I probably designed like 15 for him, and all monster themed. And it's just like one of the coolest clients that you could have. And people really responded to those. And then from there, other companies like H Street and Plan B skateboards, and then Birdhouse and Tony Hawk. And so lots of awesome opportunities I'm super grateful for, because it's
my gosh. Yeah. I mean,
it's like the sixth grade version of myself is geeking out.
Yeah. And that's the guy you got to impress.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. Cause I remember watching, like, through social media, seeing you were attempting skateboarding.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, like, holy smoke. And then I swear, you blink your eyes and there's your new line of skateboards coming out. And it's like, that's crazy. Like, this is like progress.
Yeah.
Times 10, Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So it really changed your life.
Yeah, it really did. Yeah. And I think that working you go through that period of time where you're doing grown up stuff, and
yep.
you think you're too old for something that you used to love, but then you rediscover it down the road and you're like, oh my gosh, this is like, I've been missing this. Like you kind of like find a missing piece of your soul. And like when I started skating again, it just gave me something that I was completely missing, and a certain joy and enjoyment. And it's like I totally forgot about how many life lessons skateboarding taught me. Like when I was in my most formative years, just like taking a complete beating, and just getting up, trying it again, literally bleeding.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then just mastering something through just repetition over and over and over, and just like a certain developing a thick skin against, what people might think of you or say of you is, so many lessons from skateboarding.
That's really interesting. My skateboarding ended post puberty because I was all feet, and like I was literally the gangly, clumsy teenager, like Clouseau-esque. So skateboarding, I lost my somewhere along the line. I lost my my balance, but I remember as a kid I was really into skateboarding, and my mother once said to us one summer, my sister and I, they're going to take you kids away. They're going to think we abuse you, because I was so black and blue and bloody with 2 skin knees. And you just didn't care. You were skateboarding. That's part of what happens, Yeah. And I can honestly remember the first time I ever saw, I think it was on Kids Are People 2 or something. Somebody came in, but they had elbow pads and knee pads and a helmet. And my first thought was, dork.
Yeah, that guy doesn't really skateboard.
Yeah. Like, what the hell? And I mean, like, I did the exact same thing in my 20s when a friend of mine rolled by with a bike helmet on. I was like, And then when I took a very bad spill on my own bike, I realized, that bike, the helmet wasn't such a bad idea.
Yeah, not a bad idea. Yeah.
As I was doing a judo roll onto a curb,
Yeah, no, I am somewhat, I know my limits as a 47-year-old man. Like I know what I'm comfortable with, and I don't, I stay within that gamut of reasonable risk, going out skating. So, yeah.
So, let's talk a little bit about your involvement with Captain Action now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. I almost buried a very important lead there. You're working with a new, I guess it's like, I haven't talked to Steve about what to call it, but it's almost like a think tank of brands, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Atomic Toy Box is part of that. Yeah. And then LBO, Let's Be Onyx is another part of that.
That's the name.
And yeah. So hats off to Steve Forward. I think he's a mutual friend of ours.
Yep.
Steve is a great guy, and he and Atomic Toy Box, Michael Polis, had me out to Comic-Con this year to do some signings, San Diego, and
very cool.
I helped design. I helped them with some Captain Action sticker sets and Dr. Evil shirt, and I'm working on something really cool for them this year as well, which I think that you will love. It's still top secret, but props to Steve Ford and those guys. They're doing some really, really cool things. His Forgotten Future toy line and characters is just magical.
He's got a great Facebook group too called Forgotten Future, and it's just it's something new. And I like that, I'm a little worried about pop culture in some regards, that we're just going over the same characters, and we need to kind of, come up with something like, that's now, I guess, in a way. And if there's anybody who should be drawing Dr. Evil, though, it's you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I love that. I love that design. I don't collect Captain Action, but this summer, a local shop had a Dr. Evil in the window, and it was vintage and it was complete, and it was like, and it's now here because I had to have it. It was just like, there's something about that toy that they're not related, but you've got some Tomland Star Raiders back there,
and
it feels as if they kind of come all from the same kind of place.
Yeah,
you know?
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
You
know, I don't collect the Star Raiders, but I do love them. I do think they're just absolutely special.
I'm surprised you don't collect them.
It was priority. There was a time about 10 or 15 years ago, I bought an entire collection of them off a guy.
Oh, wow.
This was back before they kind of took off. And because I had Plaid Stallions, occasionally people would try to sell me things. And it wasn't that the collection was fair price, but it wasn't like free. I mean, I was still paying him $80 a figure or something like that, which at the time was going right. And I had the whole set, and I photographed them, or a really good starter set. None of the glows or any of that, but I actually did own a glow draw. And it was mainly a decision like, do I want to do this or do I want to go really? I was really still very involved with the Lincoln Monsters and completing my set.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always going to be my first love. And so I parted with them to finance buying more vintage toys. And now it's just, it's there's too many barriers to entry. It's very expensive. Like I'd need to spend more than I'm willing to get a set of them,
Yeah.
If I run into them at an antique mall, all bets are off. But I can live without them. But they are something I admire.
Yeah, something about those 70s figures. The same with the Megos. It's just like they look like they're wearing pajamas, and there's something magical about that I love.
The Human Torch blew me away as a kid. Like I know it's silly, but you're like, yeah, but that's fun. You know what I mean? Like I just remember, like I love like that Mego aesthetic. It's not for everybody, and I've talked to people like the Marvel Legends and the Star Wars Black, and they're not that. They never will be that.
No.
And that's we're never going to get that hyper detail, and I don't have anything against that hyper detail, but for me, things like Kenner's likeness of Michael Keaton back in the 90s is like toy perfection. Like we don't need to we could go further, but we don't have to. We did it. Everybody can tell that's Michael Keaton. So, what are your top vintage toy lines that you look for and try to collect these days?
All right. Well, I've been big into the Mego 50th, so I've gotten quite a few of those. And then I just grabbed these Tomland figures off of eBay. There's a guy who is selling, and they've got some repo parts and whatnot, but I really don't care about stuff like that. It's just I enjoy them.
Yeah.
So I just recently recollected all the Indiana Jones figures from the early 80s, the Kenner line, which ironically, in a twist of irony, within a year, Kenner Hasbro re-released and reissued the original figures after it had gotten done spending quite a bit on eBay, buying them back. But I love those, and those are very close to my heart.
But original is its own merit.
Yeah.
Now, like you tracked down the original vintage. I bought an Indy and a Marion off the Toys R Us, and I don't even know where they are. But I bought I think a couple of companies have reproduced the Tron figures over the years.
Yeah.
But I tracked down a complete set of, well, not complete. I think I'm missing the staff, but all 4 figures, 2 with discs at PowerCon this year, and oh man, like they're a little play worn, but I love
those are awesome figures.
They're right behind me, they're awesome. So I absolutely would prefer to have those than carded NECA reproductions. So it's interesting how that all works. So you still have that's still an amazing feat to complete that set too. Isn't like Marion really tough?
She is, and the one I've got is a reproduction. But like I said, I don't really care. I rebought the Well of Souls playset, which is one of my all-time favorite playsets from forever. I think that's an amazing playset.
It's amazing the detail they put into that thing.
Oh my gosh, right on down to the sculpting and the little like mummified corpse that is included. That's one of my favorite figures of all time. Like I would play with
R2 and C3PO on the wall too.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Which I thought that's a nice little Easter egg.
I picked one of those up back in the 80s at a pool store. Like,
oh wow!
My parents were going to get chlorine or something, and they had like like pool stores used to sell toys.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't ever remember seeing the Kenner Indiana Jones line in Canada. It may have hit the cities, but I don't think it hit the suburbs, right?
Yeah.
And so I bought that for like $4 at that store. This is probably like 1986 too, and before I sold it, I kind of put it together because I was curious, and it was like, this is gorgeous.
Yeah.
And my one regret is I sold it probably in the late 80s for nothing, because that stuff took a long time to appreciate in collector interest, even though that comes with the Ark, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's
snakes, lots of little plastic snakes.
Little plastic snakes, yeah. It's a good playset. It's
really good.
Yeah. Do you collect playsets, or do you like in general? Because they're a space killer usually.
They are a space killer. No, I'm more of just a figure guy, except for a few key ones like that, like the Well of Souls. I liked that because of. I like that it came with a figure. If a playset comes with a figure, if I had it as a kid, maybe. But I don't know that I have much else in the realm of playsets other than that. Like even I have my entire Kenner Star Wars collection still from the 80s, 70s, and 80s. I still have that. But like the Ewok Village and stuff like that, it was just taking up too much room. I ended up selling the playsets for those.
Yeah, makes sense. I don't have any. Yeah. I don't have any Star Wars playsets anymore either, because it's you got to draw a line somewhere.
You got to draw the line somewhere. Yeah.
Have you ever seen that? This just reminds me of something you would enjoy, maybe, of the aesthetic of that early '90s Kenner Swamp Thing playset.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. It was a Robin Hood. Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Or no, wait, it was a Dagobah playset, wasn't it? Like reissued with like a big treetop on top of it. It was something before.
I was thinking of the one that was like the laboratory.
Oh, the transducer.
The transducer, yeah.
Yes,
that thing.
I recently purchased the little action figure that comes with
it. that little bug man. Yeah.
Yeah, he was awesome.
When you said exclusive action figure, I was like, that's still something I'm like, I bought one when they came out. I was 20 years old. But I was just like, this is so neat. And it was one of those things where I don't even know what happened to it. I may have not even sold it. I may have just given it away. But I think about it often now and go, I would buy that again if I saw it, because it's
a cool playset. Yeah,
just a really, like, there was a lot of innovation and creativity in that toy line, and I think you were getting like 60s Monster Kids in the 90s. Developing some toys, and that you could taste the influence a little bit.
That was a cool line. I remember when I was 15. No, I was 14. It was the beginning of my freshman year in high school, and I remember there was a Target nearby that I would ride my skateboard to. It was probably like 15, 20 minutes away on a. I remember going there on a fall afternoon and seeing those Swamp Thing figures on the shelf and leaving with the main Swamp Thing figure and then skating back home with it. Like I was still like,
very distinct memory. Yeah, that's
very
great.
Distinct memory.
Yeah,
but it was pretty cool. Yeah, early 90s were fun. I had a friend who was just a couple years older than me. This is funny. This is a little bit of a rabbit trail, but it ties in with all this stuff. But when I was a freshman in high school, which I mark as like one of the most like creative, like Renaissance years of my life. Like it was a year that was just exploding with creativity. And part of that was like, I was still kind of into toys from like, okay, so like elementary, like from the time when I was a child, I was into figures until about like 5th grade and 6th grade. The last action figure line I collected was Captain Power. I secretly collected that when I was in 6th grade. And then I kind of, I love that line. And And then I kind of put down toy collecting at the end of 6th grade. Started liking girls and thought I was too old to do those things. So I was like, okay, I'm skateboarding and girls now. So, but anyways, like a year later, I started collecting Ninja Turtles. Like in 8th grade, I went through a weird in between year where I thought I was cool and too old for that stuff. And then as soon as 8th grade, it was game on again with 8th grade action figure collecting. But then when I was a freshman in high school, there was this little zine, this little magazine I found at the local skate shop, and it was just a black and white, like just a pop culture zine or whatever. And I contacted the guy. He was like looking for artists. It was my friend David. And there's this guy that I got to be good friends with. And he was a couple years older than me. And he worked at a Circus World at a nearby mall that I was at all the time because I was a high schooler. So we were mall rats.
And you always, even my wife said I always went to look at the toys. It was like a thing you did,
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. And so I remember I talked to him on the phone. I did some artwork for him. And then I remember I was in Circus World one time and I was like, wait, and I saw this guy and I was like, wait a second, are you David? And he was like, yeah. I was like, oh, I'm Tim. I'm the guy that does artwork for your magazine. And so him and I got to be really good friends. And this was a cool connection because like early 90s was weird because like they were like Circus World and KB would get these waves of figures in from the late 80s that they were just clearancing out that I don't even remember seeing in the stores. Like there was this later wave of Silverhawks action figures that I got for like $4 for $1 or something weird, or these Supernatural Ghostlings figures, or these like Freddy and Jason Spitballs. Like just
I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah, like pennies on the dollar. Like they were clearancing these things out en masse. And it's just and so he would contact me anytime that they'd put something new out. It was such an exciting time period. And him and I would do comic books and stuff together. So that was a very, very creative. And you see in that, in that story how toys and creativity and comics, it was all working together. It was all part of one big train of creativity, and it still is, the toys, it's all self-referencing, geeking out, all the time.
Yeah, it felt like the early 90s we were starting to get very aware of some of our own pop culture, and it was exciting. It was an interesting time, and then you add the internet to it, and then kaboom. I mean, I was collecting Mego before, but when the internet came, all of a sudden, like my collection expanded, my knowledge expanded, and I met people that I'm still talking to 30 years later. I don't even like to think about how far back I go with some of these people because it makes you realize, like, my youth. What happened?
Oh, I was gonna say also one cool addendum to that story was like back in the early 90s, I was big into dumpster diving. Like that's before people put locks in their dumpsters, and you could find, if you were willing to do the work, like you could find some gems and some dumpsters. And so like a lot of times we would just drive by comic book store dumpsters or like department store dumpsters, and I'd pull out fixtures and me and this dude, my friend David, and it was the coolest thing. Like we'd get enough fixtures that like and this just still blows my mind. The picture only exists in my memory to this day, but he had grabbed enough fixtures from where he worked at Circus World and just like out of dumpsters that in his house or his apartment, he had like a walk-in closet, right? Well, he had decked it out as if it were a toy store.
Oh, wow.
It was like, so like, I mean, it did, but it didn't, but he had like a small little like circular thing he had figures. Cause like there was stuff we'd get at the Dollar Tree, like these Computer Warriors figures and Dick Tracy figures just for next to nothing.
Yeah.
And so we would just buy like 1,000 of them and then put them all on a peg. And so it looked like, had stores. I did the same thing in my room. I had a Planters peanut rack that I got and then decorated with action figures. It hung on it was just fun. It was just really, really, it was like level 10 nerd,
Yeah, and there's no end game.
No.
There's just it's just having fun and keeping going. I loved that era. You just reminded me, and I haven't thought of this in years. I like always worked jobs as a kid, and when I was like 14, I got a job being the donkey for a paint crew. Being you get to sand and you get to sweep and that kind of thing. And that's where my skill level changed. But it was a warehouse, and we were hired to clean it up and repaint it. And the former owner of the warehouse, this is probably like 84, 85, I don't even know, was the distributor of videotapes. And
oh, wow.
I remember having to fill a dumpster with Filmation VHS boxes. So like those big giant boxes for like Shazam, Lassie, all these Filmation programs. And there were standees and posters. And I was geeking out because like I loved Filmation, and I was like, how is this happening to me?
Wow.
And I think, I could only take home so much of it on my bike. Like I think I took some posters and stuff, but what we threw out was like, gold, Jerry,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, I can remember that like vividly. And it's just like, I didn't even know there was a Filmation Lassie show at the time. I think there was a Zorro and a Lone Ranger bot. I can't, I think it was a company called FHE that was doing
Family Home Entertainment.
Giant boxes, and yeah, they had left it all there. And like, I guess they just didn't, I don't know if it was discontinued or whatever, or they went out of business. I don't know, but I threw out some cool stuff.
Oh man. Well, that also reminds me of another story. One thing that me and that dude would do, like on weekends, we would just drive to video stores, literally just drive. I couldn't drive. He drove, and just ask them if they had any posters that they didn't need.
Oh yeah.
And so I would, we would get all kinds of, and I had my room as a kid. My room as a kid was nuts. Like I even had posters, nailed, like pinned to my ceiling that I got from these video stores.
I did the exact same thing, and I still have some of those. Do you still have any?
No, I did have some Where's the Beef posters from Children's Palace that I got for clearance. I just bought a ton of them for no good reason.
So you could make a wall of Clara Peller.
I wish I still had some of those, but I remember I did have one of those on my ceiling along with like a Goodfellas poster that I had never watched in real life, but I was like, it's a cool movie poster. I'll put it on my ceiling.
How funny would it be to have your new gallery show, and then when people show up, it's just all those posters?
That would be outstanding.
I remember doing that really well. I remember I would stop at video stores just to see what they had, but they often either sold the posters here, or they just had free poster bin, and they would write in pencil on the lip of it what it was. And I still have 3. I wish I still had more, but
wow.
I still have the Return of Swamp Thing.
What a gem.
Yeah, that's a classic. I still have the Planet of the Apes 5 tapes will make you go ape, and that's on my wall. And the one I'm really proud of is the Godzilla's 30th birthday, I think it is. So it's from like 84, and he's got a cake and he's blowing it out like with his fire breath. That one is, but the one I'm missing, and I really miss, is I had a gorgeous, and this was like right like downtown. I was just like, pedaling my bike. I saw a little hole in the wall video store, Doctor Who and the Daleks.
Oh, wow.
Poster, and it was gorgeous. And I don't know what happened to it. I would have never sold it. So it probably got damaged in a flood or something like that. But that one was like really, really cool find for me, because I was really into Doctor Who at the time.
Yeah.
And, when are you going to find a Doctor Who poster downtown in a free bin, like,
wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, I miss video stores, sir. So we should probably wrap this up, man. But I wanted to mention before the end that we're going to actually continue this conversation in the next issue of Toy Ventures magazine. We're going to talk about some toy influences and showcase some of your work. Where can people find you, Tim?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at timbaronart, TimBaronArt. My website is timbaron.com. If you go to my website and click on the store, it'll take you to my Etsy shop. And
which I'm on right now.
And I've got lots of cool posters, figures, skateboard decks for sale on my Etsy.
Yeah, no, this is really great. And when I'm off camera, I want to talk to you about a little bit about something I want to do in the near future with something I'm doing, because I think it's right up your alley.
Oh, yeah, definitely interested. Yeah, the Etsy site is, let's see, what is it? It is, etsy.com/shop/timbaronart.
That's right.
Click in the link in my bio on my Instagram or
and there's a ton of groovy stuff. There's stickers and prints and action figures and posters and boy, we like a lot of the same stuff.
We sure do.
Like I love your sticker posters.
Oh yeah, thank you.
The Imperial
is based off those. You mean the Puffy monster sticker?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, dude! Every single time when I was little, I'd go to the drugstore with my mom, and I can't tell you how many times we repurchased those Puffy monster stickers.
Oh yeah. One thing I'm really happy I've hung on to is in the very early 2000s, this dealer came from Quebec, and he had sheets of Puffy stickers.
Oh,
and he had
man.
all kinds of them, but he had the Monsters one, and I think I paid $25 for it, and I still have it in the original plastic with all the guys on it. And
awesome. Well, you know what inspired me to do that poster was that page right out of your, I think it's right out of your Rack Toys book.
Yeah, that's actually the thing I own.
Okay, yeah, that's what inspired me to do that poster, man. So
thank you. Oh, thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So all right, well this has been Toy Talk Show. Thank you very much, Tim. This has been a blast, and we really need to get you onto Pod Stallions as well. I know you're friends with Jason, and he's mentioned he's always said, he's really easy to talk to. And
let me know. I'd love it. Thank you again. For
totally are. So I'll hit up Jason soon, and we'll get more Tim.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Great. All right. Thanks everyone for watching. Take care.